Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. The time is 3 p.m, exactly on the hour, and the date is the 10th of July 2025. Thursday. Had to think for a moment. It's been a lovely day. I've had the birdies outside for a couple of hours, but the wind came up, got a bit blustery and cold, so I brought them back in, and I've cleaned my air conditioner, which needs to be done monthly, and done a few loads of washing, hung them out, and fed the wild lorikeets that I just noticed flying across. We'll just see, why did he fly away? Don't know. Anyway, they'll be back. We've put their food back out. I took their food inside so it wouldn't get devoured by the possums during the night. And I put it back out, and so they're here again. So they come in the afternoons. So it's all very lovely, and house has been cleaned by Rati. Thank you, Rati. And I did a little bit of dusting in my front living room when I cleaned the aircon, and just did that corner, and so much dusting to do, but if I do a little bit each day and get on top of it, it wouldn't be a drama, would it? But Mama T tends to let things go, and then it becomes a huge cataclysmic event. So anyway, I feel good. I've done a little bit of cleaning as well as Rati's work, so we're on top of things here at Sacred Space. So I thought, I could be still dusting, you understand. The rest of the lounge to dust, and the bedroom to dust, and the spare room to dust, and the kitchen to dust, and this room to dust. But it's not that dirty. I did it last Tuesday in here, and it's looking still very nice. Just watching that lorikeet, who's the cutest little thing. Anyway, so to hell with dusting. Let's do what we always do. Live in Titania's realm with Queen Titania and King Oberon and all the little pixies and the wild birds and the garden, and read wonderful stories. Because it beats reality a bit, doesn't it? Reality can be terrifying at times, or if not terrifying, plain bloody dull and boring. Gotta make your own life, people there. What do I call it? Co-creating with the gods. It's astonishing what the gods bring us sometimes, some wonderful, immaculate surprises. Speaking of which, I was out with my boys, Kermie and Bo, that are in there, and I had them outside, and I've got a little friend, he's a butcher bird. So I'm sitting watching YouTube videos, but sitting keeping company with the boy birds, and I hear my little butcher bird singing to me. He always sings to me. I couldn't see him. I was like, where are you? And then anyway, I looked up. He was up on the hill's voice, just watching over me. And I actually got up and got really close to him, like only about 2 feet away from him, just looking right at him. And then I was talking to him, and he's looking down with his beak like this, listening to me talk to him. And then he turned his back. So I thought, okay, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. But then I just very quietly and calmly walked, around in front of him and spoke to him again. And he looked at me again, a bit astonished that I'd followed him. And he's just the most gorgeous little thing. He acts like a pet. He's not a pet. He's a completely wild bird, but he must have been around people a lot. Maybe someone took him in when he was sick or something. It's just so tame. Anyway, that was the little bit of magic today, my little butcher bird friend. And my lorikeet friend is sitting there on his own. I don't know where his mate is. By Joe's it is too. There's a tawny frogmouth asleep in the tree. I hadn't even noticed it. He's been there all day. I'm pretty sure it's a tawny. He's got his head tucked in down his back and his wings and his... Oh, well, there's another bit of magic today. It's actually not magic, it's just nature, but I haven't seen him sitting there in the trees sleeping before. There's two of them, both fast asleep. Oh, and I've been so noisy in the garden with my YouTube videos, keeping them awake. I wondered what little Bo was reacting like he was so frightened of, because I didn't see them. He'd been there the whole day. Well, if we were on my iPhone, I would have taken you out and filmed them. Not that they're doing anything, they're sleeping, but how delightful. Oh no, one's awake, he just lifted his head up. How delightful. Well, there you go, people of Earth. Sacred spaces for all the birdies. They all come here because they know I'm kind to them, and I leave little tidbits out. And when I have leftover, roast chicken, cooked chicken that I buy in Woolies, I give the kookaburras and the crows scraps. So they all come round now, and they all hang out, and they all show their appreciation in their non-verbal, sometimes verbal ways. It's marvellous. I want to go out and take a photo of those tawny frogmouths. I might just do that quickly while we're filming. Just excuse me a little bit, but that's too lovely. Hadn't even noticed they were there. Right, boys, now I know why you were scared today, little Bo. Because the tawny frogmouths were there. going to read stories on YouTube. I see these guys up on the tree. I don't know how to. I'm trying to publish it. Here we are. Last time I tried, it wouldn't let me publish. It was kept trying to cut everything short because it's a short. Anyway, I'll just see if it will work out because that was gorgeous. Really gorgeous. Had a little chat to them, told them how beautiful they were. And one opened its eyes and looked right down at me like that. It was a bit scary because, you know, they do have a way of looking like birds of prey. And it was just delightful. Delightful but scary. Not scary in a bad way because I know they won't hurt me. They know I don't hurt them and I won't be hurt by them. But my little lorikeet's just sitting there, just not moving much. Now I know why he's probably being a little bit cool. They're right above his head too. Well, above his head and just a few metres behind him. But I just spilled my tea. By the gods. Things that happen at sacred space. Right. Now, let us continue reading our story, which is what I came here to do. But that was too lovely not to capture. Really was too bloody lovely. Right. So, today's offering from W. Somerset Maugham is called The Closed Shop. Sorry, I just covered in tea. By the gods. Peach iced tea too, my favourite. Right, let us continue. Let me just catch my breath. Had a bit of pain the last 2 days, yesterday and most of today in my intercostal muscles. I think the pressure's now too high for me if I've improved or adjusted somehow. The pressure on the CPAP machine, I mean. I'll have to wait a little bit longer because otherwise you have to pay for the sleep specialist to adjust the pressures and, you know, it'll be another $300. So I'll soldier on a little bit more and maybe it'll settle down, maybe it won't. If I keep having pain for more than a week, they'll probably have to lower the pressure, which could mean that I'm getting better, maybe. Well, one can only hope. What would a healthy mama tea achieve? Don't know. Never been healthy. Bit of an astonishing thought. Right, anyway, where were we? Ah, yes, reading The Closed Shop. Nothing would induce me to tell the name of the happy country in which the incidents occurred that I am constrained to relate. But I see no harm in admitting that it is a free and independent state on the continent of America. This is vague enough in all conscience and can give rise to no diplomatic incident. Now, the president of this free and independent state had an eye to a pretty woman, and there came to his capital a wide and sunny town with a plaza, a cathedral that was not without dignity, a wide and sunny town. Sorry, I've skipped back in the space-time continuum. A cathedral that is not without dignity and a few old Spanish houses. A young person from Michigan of such a pleasing aspect that his heart went out to her. He lost no time in declaring his passion and was gratified to learn that it was returned, but he was mortified to discover that the young person regarded his possession of a wife and her possession of a husband as a bar to their union. She had a feminine weakness for marriage, though it seemed unreasonable to the president. He was not the man to refuse a pretty woman the gratification of her whim, and promised to make such arrangements as would enable him to offer her wedlock. He called his attorneys together and put the matter before them. He had long thought, he said, that for a progressive country, their marriage. Let me just move my cup over here. Oh, it's too heavy. It's too empty. Triple goddess. Let me just fill up my. Sorry, I can't do this unless I'm comfortable. People prima donna, diva mama too. Yes, when she's not being a universal schmuck, kicked at every turn by every low-level fucking scum entity, she can be a bit of a diva. Survival will do that to you. Yes, indeed. Survival and thriving. That's better. It's just a bit cold. Right, where were we? Let me just start that sentence again. I broke off mid-sentence. He had long thought, he said, that for a progressive country, their marriage laws were remarkably out of date, and he proposed, therefore, radically to amend them. Sounds a bit like King Henry VIII, and how did that work out for everyone? By the gods. The attorneys retired, and after a brief interval devised a divorce law that was satisfactory to the president. But the state of which I write was always careful to do things in a constitutional way. I've lost it. Here we go. For it was a highly civilized, democratic, and reputable country. A president who respects himself and his oath of office cannot promulgate a law, even if it is to his own interest, without adhering to certain forms, and these things take time. The president had barely signed the decree that made the new divorce law valid when a revolution broke out, and he was very unfortunately hanged on a lamp-post in the plaza in front of the cathedral, that was not without dignity. The young person of pleasing aspect left town in a hurry, but the law remained. Just see if my video is published. Let's have a look. Ah, yes. Delightful. Its terms were simple. On the payment of $100 gold, and after a residence of 30 days, a man could divorce his wife, or a wife her husband, without even apprising the other party of the intended step. It's a bit rude, isn't it? Your wife might tell you that she was going to spend a month with her aged mother, and one morning at breakfast, when you looked through your mail, you might receive a letter from her informing you that she had divorced you and was already married to another. Now it was not long before the happy news spread here and there that at a reasonable distance from New York was a country, the capital of which had an equable climate and tolerable accommodation, where a woman could release herself expeditiously and with economy from the irksome bonds of matrimony. I guess it's not such a bad idea after all. Having to wait a year for a divorce here in Brisbane was an agony, especially while being under constant threat. Awful it was. Many a time I beat my breast and tear my hair out and say, I wish I was getting divorced in America. It's so much quicker and easier. But anyway, it was awful. Awful, awful, awful. That's why I made a promise to myself that I would never marry again. And, I didn't have even an opportunity for that since I kept attracting fucking arseholes, so there was that. But never mind. We won't upset ourselves about it anymore. Everything is as it is meant to be. Has a reason and a season. But by the gods, those were bad years. Very bad years. Anyway, the fact that the operation could be performed without the husband's knowledge saved her from those preliminary and acrimonious discussions that are so wearing to the nerves. Every woman knows that however much a man may argue about a proposition, he will generally accept a fact with resignation. Excuse me. Tell him you want a Rolls Royce, and he will say he can't afford it, but buy it, and he will sign his cheque like a lamb. I don't think so. Do you know how much Rolls Royces cost these days? Neither do I, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would imagine. Anyway, should we Google it? Yes, let's Google it. Let's really blow our minds. Also, Mama T has to keep, abreast of the real world and the times. I need to know how much a Rolls Royce costs. Let me see. How much for a new? Do they even still make them? I don't know. Rolls Royce. Might be even out of production. The Queen used to drive around in them, didn't she? Aha. A new Rolls Royce can range in price from, get this, $397,750 for the Spectre to over $1 million for a Phantom, depending on the model, customization options and additional features. Show more. The Rolls-Royce Spectre is an electric coupe. Can exceed 500,000 with options. Rolls-Royce Ghost sedan starts at 680,000, with black badge models reaching 800,000, and the Rolls-Royce Phantom sedan can exceed 1 million with bespoke features, and the Rolls-Royce Cullinan SUV can reach over 700,000. Well, look, even if I won, multitudes of millions. Still wouldn't waste my money on one of them. It's $1 million, it's a house, people. Imagine driving around in the equivalent of a house. And they still rust and get damaged in accidents like any other vehicle. And imagine how much you'd have to pay on insurance, by the gods. It's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? This is the Cullinan. Bit boxy, but it's an SUV. Oh. Well, there you go. I wasn't even sure if they were still in production. So, Mother T learned something new today, and you, my beautiful YouTube audience, learnt it with me. Except for those of you who are wealthy enough to be laughing right now that I had no idea. No idea. And none at all. Right. So in a very short time, beautiful women in considerable numbers began to come down to the pleasant sunny town. Tired businesswomen and women of fashion, women of pleasure and women of leisure. They came from New York, Chicago, San Francisco. They came from Georgia, and they came from Dakota. They came from all the states in the Union. The passenger accommodation on the ships of the United Fruit Line was only just adequate to the demand, and if you wanted a stateroom to yourself, you had to engage it 6 months in advance. Prosperity descended upon the capital of this enterprising state, and in a very little while there was not a lawyer in it who did not own a Ford car. So I have to laugh at that. But not a Rolls Royce, you understand? Although there's probably a few that aspired to that with their shenanigans and finagling. Anyway, Don Agosto, the proprietor of the Grand Hotel, went to the expense of building several bathrooms, but he did not grudge it. He was making a fortune, and he never passed the lamppost on which the outgoing president had been hanged without giving it a jaunty wave of his hand. He was a great man, he said. One day they will erect a statue to him. I have spoken as though it were only women who availed themselves of this convenient and reasonable law, and this might indicate that in the United States it is they rather than men who desire release from the impediment of holy matrimony. Are you swinging, little Kermy boy? I have no reason to believe that this is so. Though it was women in great majority who travelled to this country to get a divorce, I ascribe this to the fact that it is always easy for them to get away for 6 weeks, a week there, a week back, and 30 days to establish a domicile. But it is difficult for men to leave their affairs so long. It is true that they could go there during their summer holidays, but then the heat is somewhat oppressive, and besides, there are no golf links. It is reasonable enough to suppose that many a man will hesitate to divorce his wife when he can only do it at the cost of a month's golf. Just go look at this wonderful bird. Look at him go. What you doing, little Kirby? Are you swinging the swing? You're swinging the swing. I know. You're a very clever boy. I don't know why you won't use the swing in the other cage today when you were outside. It's a bit odd, but it makes sense to the Kearney, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It makes sense only to the Kearney. Right, where were we? There were, of course, 2 or 3 males spending their 30 days at the Grand Hotel, but they were generally, for a reason that is obscure, commercial travellers. I can but imagine that by the nature of their avocations, they were able, at one and the same time, to pursue freedom and profit. Be this as it may, the fact remains that the inmates of the Grand Hotel, were for the most part women and very gay. It was in the patio at luncheon and at dinner, when they sat at little square tables under the arches, discussing their matrimonial troubles and drinking champagne. Don Agosto did a roaring trade with the generals and colonels. There were more generals than colonels in the army of the state. The lawyers, bankers, merchants, and the young sparks of the town who came to look at these beautiful creatures. But the perfect is seldom realized in this world. There is always something that is not quite right, and women engaged in getting rid of their husbands are very properly in an agitated condition. It makes them at times hard to please. Now it must be confessed that this delightful little city, notwithstanding its manifold advantages, somewhat lacked places of amusement. There was but one cinema, and this showed films that had been wandering too long from their happy home in Hollywood. In the daytime, you could have consultations with your lawyer, polish your nails, do a little shopping, but the evenings were intolerable. There were many complaints that 30 days was a long time, and more than one impatient young thing asked her lawyer why they didn't put a little pep into their law and do the whole job in 48 hours. Indeed. It's just ditching dud, for the love of God. You can acquire these duds so quickly, you should be able to get rid of them just as quickly. Not get rid of them and murder them or anything horrible like that. Although that would be quicker than being made to wait 30 days. Probably became quite attractive to some minds, just saying. By the gods. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes, 48 hours. Don Agosto, however, was a man of resource, and presently he had an inspiration. He engaged a troupe of wandering Guatemaltecans who played the marimba. There is no music in the world that sets the toes so irresistibly tingling, and in a little while everyone in the patio began dancing. 'Tis of course obvious that 25 a beautiful woman cannot dance with 3 commercial travellers, but there were all these generals and colonels, and there were all the young sparks of the town. They danced divinely, and they had great liquid black eyes. The hours flew, The days tripped one upon the heels of the other so quickly that the month passed before you realized it, and more than one of Don Agosto's guests, when she bade him farewell, confessed that she would willingly have stayed longer. Don Agosto was radiant. He liked to see people enjoy themselves. The marimba band was worth twice the money he paid for it, and it did his heart good to see his ladies dance with the gallant officers and the young men of the town. Since Don Agosto was thrifty, he always turned off the electric light on the stairs and in the passages at 10 o'clock at night, and the gallant officers and the young men of the town improved their English wonderfully. Everything went as merrily as a marriage bell. I may use a phrase that, however hackneyed, in this connection is irresistible, till one day Madame Coralie came to the conclusion that she had had enough of it. For one man's meat is another man's poison. She dressed herself and went to call on her friend Carmencita. After she had a few voluble words, stated the purpose of her visit. Had in a few voluble words, stated the purpose of her visit. Carmencita called a maid and told her to run and fetch La Gorda. They had a matter of importance which they wished to discuss with her. La Gorda, a woman of ample proportions, with a heavy moustache, soon joined them, and over a bottle of Malaga, the three of them held a momentous conversation. I'm thinking of Manischewitz, Malaga wine. It goes down your throat like the most delectable syrup. Yum. I haven't had that. My goodness. In nearly 40 years. Wonder where I could find it. Manischewitz. It's made in America. Anyway. The result of it was that they indited a letter to the president asking for an audience. The new president was a hefty young man in the early 30s who, a few years before, had been a stevedore in the employment of an American firm. And he had risen to his present exalted station by a natural eloquence and an effective use of his gun when he wanted to make a point or emphasize a statement. When one of his secretaries placed the letter before him, he laughed. What do those three old faggots want with me? But he was a good-natured fellow and accessible. He did not forget that he had been elected by the people as one of the people to protect the people. He had also, during his early youth, been employed for some months by Madame Coralie to run errands. Yes, it's the lorikeets, little Kermie. They're eating. They're happy little lorikeets. Bloody turkey just got up here. Oh, he's a pest. Right. He told his secretary that he would see them at 10 o'clock next morning. They went at the appointed hour to the palace and were led up a noble stairway to the audience chamber. The official who conducted them knocked softly on the door. A barred Judas was opened, and a suspicious eye appeared. Just checking they've still got food. Oh yes, they have indeed. Right. Naughty turkey. So naughty. Right, where were we? The president had no intention of suffering the fate of his predecessor if he could help it, and no matter who his visitors were, did not receive them without precaution. The official gave the three ladies' names. The door was opened, but not too wide, and they slipped in. It was a handsome room. Pardon me. And various secretaries at little tables in their shirt sleeves and with a revolver on each hip were busy typing. One or two other young men, heavily armed, were lying on sofas, reading the papers and smoking cigarettes. The president, also in his shirt sleeves, with a revolver in his belt, was standing with his thumbs in the sleeve holes of his waistcoat. He was tall and stout, of a handsome and even dignified presence. "Que tal?" he cried jovially, with a flash of his white teeth. "What brings you here, signoras?" "How well you're looking, Don Manuel," said La Gorda. "You are a fine figure of a man." He shook hands with them, and his staff, ceasing their strenuous activity, leaned back and cordially waved their hands to the three ladies. They were old friends, and the greetings, if a trifle sardonic, were hearty. I must disclose the fact now, which I could without doubt do in a manner so discreet that I might be misunderstood. But if you have to say something, you may just as well say it plainly as not. That these three ladies were the madams of the three principal brothels in the capital of this free and independent state. La Gorda and Carmencita were of Spanish origin and were very decently dressed in black, with black silk shawls over their heads. But Madame Coralie was French, and she wore a toque. They were all of mature age and of modest demeanour. The president made them sit down and offered them Madeira and cigarettes, but they refused. "No, thank you, Don Manuel," said Madame Coralie. "It is on business that we have come to see you." "Well, what can I do for you?" La Gorda and Carmencita looked at Madame Coralie, and Madame Coralie looked at La Gorda and Carmencita. They nodded, and she saw that they expected her to be their spokeswoman. "Well, Don Manuel, it is like this. We are three women who have worked hard for many years, and not a breath of scandal has ever tarnished our good names. There are not in all the Americas three more distinguished houses than ours, and they are a credit to this beautiful city. Why, Only last year I spent $500 to supply my sala principal with plate glass mirrors. We have always been respectable and we have paid our taxes with a regularity. It is hard now that the fruits of our labours should be snatched away from us. I do not hesitate to say, after so many years of honest and conscientious attention to business, it is unjust that we should have to submit to such treatment. The president was astounded. But Coralie, my dear, I do not know what you mean. Has anyone dared to claim money from you that the law does not sanction or that I know nothing about? He gave his secretaries a suspicious glance. They tried to look innocent, but though they were, only succeeded in looking uneasy. It is the law we complain of. Ruin stares us in the face. Ruin? So long as this new divorce law is in existence, we can do no business and we may just as well shut up our beautiful houses. Then Madame Coralie explained in a manner so frank that I prefer to paraphrase her speech that, owing to this invasion of the town by beautiful ladies from a foreign land, the 3 elegant houses on which she and her 2 friends paid taxes and rates were utterly deserted. The young men of fashion preferred to spend their evenings at the Grand Hotel, where they received, for soft words, entertainment which, at the regular establishments, they could only have got for hard cash. You cannot blame them, said the president. I don't, cried Madame Coralie. I blame the women. They have no right to come and take the bread out of our mouths. Don Manuel, you are one of the people. You are not one of these aristocrats. What will the country say if you allow us to be driven out of business by blacklegs? I ask you, is it just? Is it honest? But what can I do? Said the president. I cannot lock them up in their rooms for 30 days. How am I to blame if these foreigners have no sense of decency? It's different for a poor girl, said Lagorda. She has her way to make. But, oh my goodness, Kenny. But that these women do that sort of thing when they are not obliged to, no. That I shall never understand. It's a bad and wicked law, said Carmencita. The president sprang to his feet and threw his arms akimbo. You are not going to ask me to abrogate a law that has brought peace and plenty to this country. I am of the people, and I was elected by the people, and the prosperity of my fatherland is very near my heart. Divorce is our staple industry, and the law shall be repealed only over my dead body. Oh, Maria Santissima, that it should come to this, said Carmencita. Yes, Cammy. And me with 2 daughters in a convent in New Orleans. Ah, In this business, one often has unpleasantness. But I always consoled myself by thinking that my daughters would marry well, and when the time came for me to retire, they would inherit my business. Do you think I can keep them in a convent in New Orleans for nothing? And who is going to keep my son at Harvard if I have to close my house for Don Manuel? Asked Lagoda. As for myself, said Madame Aurélie, I do not care. I shall return to France. My dear mother is 87 years of age, and she cannot live very much longer. It will be a comfort to her if I spend her last remaining years by her side, but it is the injustice of it that hurts. You have spent many happy evenings in my house, Don Manuel, and I am wounded that you should let us be treated like this. Did you not tell me yourself that it was the proudest day of your life when you entered as an honored guest the house in which you had once been employed as errand boy? I do not deny it. I stood champagne all round. Don Manuel walked up and down the large hall, shrugging his shoulders as he went, and now and then, deep in thought, he gesticulated. I am of the people, elected by the people, he cried, and the fact is, these women are blacklegs. He turned to his secretaries with a dramatic gesture. It is a stain on my administration. It is against all my principles to allow unskilled foreign labour to take the bread out of the mouths of honest and industrious people. These ladies are quite right to come to me and appeal for my protection. I will not allow the scandal to continue. It was, of course, a pointed and effective speech, but all who heard it knew that that it left things exactly where they were. Madame Coralie prodded her nose and gave it a commanding organ, a brief look in her pocket mirror. Of course I know what human nature is, she said, and I can well understand that time hangs heavily on the hands of these creatures. We could build a golf course, hazarded one of the secretaries. It is true that this would only occupy them by day. If they want men, why can't they bring them with them? Said Lagoda. Caramba! Cried the president, and with that stood on a sudden quite still. There is a solution. He had not reached his exalted station without being a man in sight and resource. He beamed. We will amend the law. Men shall come in as before without let or hindrance, but women only accompanied by their husbands or with their written consent. He saw the look of consternation which his secretaries gave him, and he waved his hand. But the immigration authorities shall receive instructions to interpret the word husband with the widest latitude. Pardon me. Maria Santissima, cried Madame Coralie. If they come with a friend, he will take care that no one else interferes with them, and our customers will return to the houses where for so long they have been so hospitably entertained. Don Manuel, you are a great man, and one of these days they will erect a statue to you. It is often the simplest expedients that settle the most formidable difficulties. The law was briefly amended according to the terms of Don Manuel's suggestion, and whereas prosperity continued to pour its blessings on the wide and sunny capital of this free and independent state, Madame Coralie was enabled profitably to pursue her useful avocations. Carmencita's two daughters completed their expensive education in the convent at New Orleans, and Lagorda's son successfully graduated at Harvard. The next story is titled The Dream. I'll just check how long it was. I have a feeling it's short, yes. Right, so we have time to squeeze in 2 stories today. The Dream. It chanced that in August 1917, the work upon which I was then engaged obliged me to go from New York to Petrograd, and I was instructed for safety's sake to travel by way of Vladivostok. I landed there in the morning and passed an idle day as best I could. The Trans-Siberian train was due to start, so far as I remember, at about 9 in the evening. I dined at the station restaurant by myself. It was crowded, and I shared a small table with a man whose appearance entertained me. He was a Russian, a tall fellow, but amazingly stout, and he had so vast a paunch that he was obliged to sit well away from the table. His hands, small for his size, were buried in rolls of fat. His hair, long, dark, and thin, was brushed carefully across his crown in order to conceal his baldness, and his huge, sallow face, with its enormous double chin, clean-shaven, gave you an impression of indecent nakedness. His nose was small, a funny little button upon that mass of flesh, and his black shining eyes were small too. But he had a large, red, and sensual mouth. He was dressed neatly enough in a black suit. It was not worn but shabby. It looked as if it had been neither pressed nor brushed since he had had it. Yes, the 2 torn frog mouths are still there. Oh, just lovely. The weather was bad, and it was almost impossible to attract the attention of a waiter. We soon got into conversation. I'm sorry, a bit distractible right now. By the gods. My goodness. 116 views already on that little short of a little tawny frog mouse. It's astonishing, isn't it? People like to see, the Australian birds in the gardens and strutting and stuff. It's very sweet. The Russian spoke good and fluent English. His accent was marked but not tiresome. He asked me many questions about myself and my plans, which, my occupation at the time making caution necessary, I answered with a show of frankness, but with dissimulation. I told him I was a journalist. He asked me whether I wrote fiction, and when I confessed that in my leisure moments I did, he began to talk of the later Russian novelists. He spoke intelligently. It was plain that he was a man of education. By this time we had persuaded the waiter to bring us some cabbage soup, and my acquaintance pulled a small bottle of vodka from his pocket, which he invited me to share. I do not know whether it was the vodka or the natural loquaciousness of his race that made him communicative, but presently he told me, unasked, a good deal about himself. He was of noble birth, it appeared, a lawyer by profession, and a radical. Some trouble with the authorities had made it necessary for him to be much abroad, but now he was on his way home. Business had detained him at Vladivostok. But he expected to start for Moscow in a week, and if I went there, he would be charmed to see me. "Are you married?" he asked me. I did not see what business it was of his, but I told him that I was. He sighed a little. "I am a widower," he said. "My wife was a Swiss, a native of Geneva. She was a very cultivated woman. She spoke English, German, and Italian perfectly. French, of course, was her native tongue. Her Russian was much above the average for a foreigner. She had scarcely the trace of an accent." He called a waiter who was busy with a tray full of dishes and asked him, I suppose, for then I knew hardly any Russian, how much longer we were going to wait for the next course. The waiter, with a rapid but presumably reassuring exclamation, hurried on, and my friend sighed. Since the Revolution, the waiting in restaurants has become abominable. Just checking on my little bio. He lighted his 20th cigarette, and I, looking at my watch, wondered whether I should get a square meal before it was time for me to start. My wife was a very remarkable woman, he continued. She taught languages at one of the best schools for the daughters of noblemen in Petrograd. For a good many years we lived together on perfectly friendly terms. She was, however, of a jealous temperament, and unfortunately she loved me to distraction. It was difficult for me to keep a straight face. He was one of the ugliest men I had ever seen. There was sometimes a certain charm in the rubicund and jovial fat man, but this saturnine obesity was repulsive. I do not pretend that I was faithful to her. She was not young when I married her, and we had been married for 10 years. She was small and thin, and she had a bad complexion. She had a bitter tongue. She was a woman who suffered from a fury of possession, and she could not bear me to be attracted to anyone but her. She was jealous, not only of the women I knew, but of my friends, my cat, and my books. On one occasion, in my absence, she gave away a coat of mine merely because I liked none of my coats so well. But I am of an equable temperament. I will not deny that she bored me, but I accepted her acrimonious disposition as an act of God and no more thought of rebelling against it than I would against bad weather or a cold in the head. I denied her accusations as long as it was possible to deny them, and when it was impossible, I shrugged my shoulders and smoked a cigarette. The constant scenes she made did not very much affect me. I led my own life. Sometimes, indeed, I wondered whether it was passionate love she felt for me or passionate hate. It seemed to me that love and hate were very near allied. So we might have continued to the end of the chapter if one night a very curious thing had not happened. I was awakened by a piercing scream from my wife. Startled, I asked her what was the matter. She told me she had had a fearful nightmare. She had dreamt that I was trying to kill her. We lived at the top of a large house and the well round which the stairs climbed was broad. I think he meant stairwell. She had dreamt that just as we had arrived at our own floor, I had caught hold of her and attempted to throw her over the balusters. It was 6 stories to the stone floor at the bottom, and it meant certain death. She was much shaken. I did my best to soothe her, but next morning, and for 2 or 3 days after, she referred to the subject again, and, notwithstanding my laughter, I saw that it dwelt in her mind. I could not help thinking of it either, for this dream showed me something that I had never suspected. She thought I hated her. She thought I would gladly be rid of her. She knew, of course, that she was insufferable, and at some time or other the idea had evidently occurred to her that I was capable of murdering her. The thoughts of men are incalculable, and ideas enter our minds that we should be ashamed to confess. Sometimes I had wished that she might run away with a lover. Sometimes that a painless and sudden death might give me my freedom. But never, never had the idea come to me that I might deliberately rid myself of an intolerable burden. The dream made an extraordinary impression upon both of us. It frightened my wife, and she became, for a little, less bitter and more tolerant. But when I walked up the stairs to our apartment, it was impossible for me not to look over the balusters and reflect how easy it would be to do what she had dreamt. The balusters were dangerously low. A quick gesture and the thing was done. It was hard to put the thought out of my mind. Then, some months later, my wife awakened me one night. I was very tired and I was exasperated. She was white and trembling. She had had the dream again. She burst into tears and asked me if I hated her. I swore by all the saints of the Russian calendar that I loved her. At last, she went to sleep again. It was more than I could do. I lay awake. I seemed to see her falling down the well of the stairs, and I heard her shriek and the thud as she struck the stone floor. I could not help shivering. The Russian stopped and beads of sweat stood on his forehead. He had told the story well and fluently, so that I listened with attention. There was still some vodka in the bottle. He poured it out and swallowed it at a gulp. "How did your wife eventually die?" I asked after a pause. He took out a dirty handkerchief and wiped his forehead. By an extraordinary coincidence, she was found late one night at the bottom of the stairs with her neck broken. Who found her? She was found by one of the lodgers who came in shortly after the catastrophe. And where were you? I cannot describe the look he gave me of malicious cunning. His little black eyes sparkled. I was spending the evening with a friend of mine. I did not come in till an hour later. At that moment, the waiter brought us the dish of meat that we had ordered, and the Russian fell upon it with good appetite. He shoveled the food into his mouth in enormous mouthfuls. I was taken aback. Had he really been telling me in this hardly veiled manner that he had murdered his wife? That obese and sluggish man did not look like a murderer. I could not believe that he would have had the courage. Or was he making a sardonic joke at my expense? In a few minutes it was time for me to go and catch my train. I left him and I have not seen him since. But I have never been able to make up my mind whether he was serious or jesting. Right, we're going to finish there, people of Earth. I've had a terrible chocolate craving for 2 days and I've got no chocolate in the house and it's very expensive at the moment. Just an ordinary block of chocolate, you're charging $8 for it that you normally can get for $3.50 or $5, which when it was $5 I thought that was getting a bit expensive. Now it's more than double its ordinary price. I'm very annoyed about this, can you tell? It's my one small, luxury and treat, and quite frankly, my addiction, being a chocoholic. Last night in desperation I made a hot chocolate to drink, but it did assuage the craving slightly, but it wasn't quite the same, you'll understand. So I'm off. I'm off like Goff to hunt down some chocolate and, pardon me, something else snacky to have. I had a very late lunch, early dinner. 3 o'clock I ate. I started this video at 3, didn't I? Well, anyway, round about 2:30ish. So I'm not really hungry per se, but I'll have to fossick something to have to eat tonight, and try and find some chocolate that's not $8 a bloody block. Oh, it's outrageous. Oh, how they crush us with their pettiness and their viciousness. But anyway, they be, you know, the supermarket chains, the government, and whoever runs the Quetzalcoatl lines these days. Maybe I should put in a word to Quetzalcoatl himself, because he's never denied the number 2 chocolate, you understand. Blessed be. But anyway, on that note, have a beautiful afternoon wherever you are in the space-time continuum, and I'll be back either later this evening with another story, or perhaps tomorrow. We've only got where did that go? We've only got a few stories left to go, so we'll just savour them like a delicious, hard-won, much yearned for and carefully preserved chocolate. Bye for now.